Truth Talks. Please, I'm excited about the Truth Talks. They are addressing true fellowship and what it means, what true fellowship and corporate worship looks like according to the Bible. I will sing to the rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown.
Welcome, everyone. How y'all doing? Feel like I've been gone forever, even though it was only a few days. It feels like forever being away from here. I tell you no lie. I really enjoy when I'm here, and I miss it when I'm gone. I think I can honestly say that I never really had that feeling before. So, thank you. Thank you. You know, I've been to a lot of places and a lot of churches, and most of the time it's like, man, Sunday again. But now it's like Wednesday, yeah. Sunday, yeah. If I could be here, I'll be here. If the Lord is willing. So let's get started. Well, today is a very lucky day because today y'all get to do what I call a small teach back. All right. So we had a little confusion in the beginning. It was cleared up prior to starting what chapter we was on, which led me to say, hey, we're on 25 officially. I know we talked about it unofficially, but let's go around the room, starting in the back. If you want to be skipped, that's perfectly fine. But let's start with chapter 1. Bring us up to speed. It is to no avail if you can't. Just where are we at right now? So let's start from the beginning.
Start out just talk about the book first.
Okay.
In Samuel, it talks about the low spiritual form of Israel.
Okay.
The priest was corrupt. The judges dealt in injustice. They were whisper idolatry, and of course they had to set the Ark of the Covenant in the tabernacle.
Okay.
Opens up.
Mark, you want to pick up where you left off or add to? Like, we just want to see where everybody is, the story.
Mm-hmm.
How you, if you had to recap what was going on so far to somebody who's unaware of what the book of Samuel is, you know, and you didn't want to do them how we were done, just a bit here and a bit here. We have collectively went over 25 chapters of a book. And we should be able to at least tell the details of the book without having it in front of us. Now, we always want the scriptures there to support what we're saying, but sometimes you just got to recap a story to somebody. So that is the reason why I wanted to kind of go around the room. Just give me your recap. Wherever you are at this point in Israel with us, let me have it. What you got, Amari?
Well, for me, people say the drama's in the details, and I appreciate Saul and Hannah and all the things that are going on. But Petedy, for me, from a standpoint, what I've started to do with the Old Testament is to see how God is moving the pieces.
Okay.
He doesn't need any man or any entity to consummate what he's doing, but he chooses to work through men and nations, like the nation of Israel. So we see them asking before for a king, and God warning them and saying, hey, you don't really want a king, and this is what the king will do. And we come to see Saul on the scene, and how Saul did exactly what God said kings would do. And then I just like to see that we can read the on the surface part of things, Petedy, but when we can see God actually unfolding his plan for the nation of Israel in terms of everything pointing to Christ, that's how I would explain. I would give them some details about Samuel, but I would really hyphenate and bring attention to the sovereignty of God in every nation, whether it's the old covenant or the new covenant.
Okay. Dennis, what you got? Just, if you don't have anything, that's fine.
Part of what he said is just their insistence on a man instead of God, and the results of it.
Okay. Andy, if you don't have anything to add, just shoot me a thumbs up and we'll press on it. It doesn't have to be long labor. I just want I don't want you to feel as if I'm the only one in here. All right. And I need to hear what you guys are giving me as feedback. So we can grow. This is not just for my growth, it's for all of our growth. So what you know, I want to know.
I agree with everything that's been said so far. And in David, I believe we're seeing, several attributes that we should probably strive for. Along with what Samuel did to it.
I would agree. Brother Buzz, what you got for me?
Well, I was also thinking of David and how, we're seeing how the Lord has been working on him to prepare him for what is before him. The Lord works in our lives, our entire life. And we sometimes get impatient, or we think that he's forgotten us, or whatever the case may be. But when you study Samuel, you realize how concerned the Lord is with the intricate details, and how he knows what needs to transpire to have his will fulfilled. And he burdens hearts, whether it be for such as Saul. He burdened his heart to act in a way that was unbecoming to Saul as a leader, but yet he needed to go there to show what the Lord is trying to show the readers of his word, to prepare them for the future.
Agreed. Andy?
I was gonna say all that.
Oh, yeah,
Well, y'all the same person, so that's okay. Just say
I
ditto.
know you're on the mic.
I
Go ahead.
actually say how amazed that I am in listening to the story, how everything is orchestrated. How the Lord orchestrates everything and even takes the worst, the bad, and turn it into his glory. And I just think it's so amazing.
Amen.
To me, I like the story as the coming of. So you got like Saul, how he became into the king from nothing, little to smallest of small. And he grew. And then you got David, who would come from small to small, and grew. And when it came to
Sorry, we heard you.
I heard a lot. But the growth of David as a combatant from as a shepherd that's taking care of little to growing into a person that's going to take care of many, take care of most, is an astonishing story of how, like Aaron was said, God orchestrated everything. It is set forth. Like we studied with election. It's like, I put you here to do this, even though it might not be good in some people's eyes, like what Saul going and chasing after David. But
Point, like
he need, as you said, David's getting a tour of the whole land that he's gonna be in charge of.
very much so, and we'll see that come up. What you got? Nothing? Crystal? Anything we like to add? Okay, they got it all for you. Eric?
I'm just reminded throughout the chapters that we went over so far, how, like several said before, how God orchestrated everything. Some things you can, mankind tend to lead to coincidence. This happened because of this happened because of that. But, you know, the thing about coincidences, few and far between when it's that important. And so we see, maybe they didn't, but we see the providence of God. We see what he's doing. We see what he's done. And throughout all of the battles that they had with the Philistines, all of, you know, while this was going on and Saul is chasing David and Jonathan's in the mix with that and all of this going on. And coincidence, you know, so my whole issue, my whole thing about that is God is orchestrating everything. It doesn't follow rhyme or reason. It's his will and his way of doing what he was doing, and it works out for the good of everybody.
Amen to that. Hope. Thanks.
Just find it amazing when men don't keep their eye on God and trust in Him. Usually they're distracted by feelings, emotions, and eyes. And even though God commanded them to do certain things, when they rebelled against Him, of course they're going to be chastised. But even in their chastisement, He still loved them. He didn't turn His back on them completely. And the same is with us today. When it comes to man, it's like they're so easily distracted.
Mhm.
And I think even to the point where they decided they wanted a king, but wanting that king wasn't going to increase their trust in God, because they had to have that trust in God. They wouldn't have asked for a king.
Understood.
I I had to understand what was the rock of escape. I didn't know what that was. So I went through,
Okay.
found out what was the rock of escape,
Okay.
and then come to find out that Jesus Christ, He's also the rock
Mm-hmm.
of salvation. So that's how they got kind of saved, because He went into that that rock of salvation. That was interesting to me. And what really got my goat is when he got married to two other women. And
he already had a wife at home, right?
Yeah,
Hmm.
but anyway, but then that wife got married to somebody else.
Oh, we're gonna get into all of that.
Yeah, so
That's a reason behind it's a method behind all the mess. Thank you for sharing that, because you didn't right catapult where we go. I would say, are we done? Is no one else? No, just nothing. What you got left for us? I couldn't leave you out. That wouldn't be no fun.
Joe,
You told me I need to go sit down.
I'd be
What'd you say,
out.
Cannon? What'd you say?
Okay. All the collected notes that I got, I wrote everything down.
I seen
Okay.
him grab the piece of paper, so I already knew what I was getting.
Okay. You have a godly mother,
Okay.
Anna.
Mhm.
You have a judge,
Mhm.
a prophet, and a priest,
Mhm.
Samuel. You have God, which is the king, the chief character in this
Mhm.
sovereignty of God. You have Christ that is always alluded to in this as we move
Mhm.
forward in this. And the thing is that, as we all said, came back to everything, it's being obedient to God or being disobedient to God.
That's where the rubber meets the road.
Okay. And those that were disobedient to God was the one that got hold of the Ark of the Covenant.
Mhm.
They found out they could not handle it, so they had tried to get it back, and they could not get it back fast enough, okay, without being their little gods being put to display.
Mhm.
Okay, but you see all this, as everybody said, is the sovereignty of God is working through all this. The sovereignty of God moves us to a point that as you need these old scriptures, the Old Testament, you see it even more in the New Testament
Mhm.
as everything unfolds, especially in the next few chapters, starting at 25, 26, and so David has you see how David transforms from, okay, he's a shepherd, okay, he's anointed king, but not have taken the kingship yet,
Mhm.
but then he's recognized as the king by Saul, who
Mhm.
finally recognized that he is king, and a promise is made to him not to get rid of his whole entire life. Line.
That was one beautiful recap. All they had to do was throw some names in there and sprinkle a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and I think it would have been done. Hey,
Yes, sir.
you could have taught everything I taught in what, 3 weeks, man? You could have did that in 5 minutes. Where you been at this whole time? I gotta listen.
Sitting here listening to you.
Oh, so amazing feedback, amazing feedback, and that feedback is yours, not mine. That means you put the time in. You put you opened up the manuscripts, you opened up the text, you Googled, you looked for whatever you needed to, because you wanted to build your relationship with Christ. That's what this was about. The study, and for me to hear everybody give it back to me, it lets me know that we collectively are going forward like we should be. And not only are we going forward as people are learning, y'all going forward to be able to teach somebody. Because it was a beautiful thing to be able to reflect on what we've learned. Even all the way down to the end, where we got an amazing wrap up from almost chapter 1 all the way to where we are now. Now, last week we ended off on chapter 24, and I was telling y'all a little bit about, oh, I hate when it does that. There we go. We left on chapter 24. We got Samuel's death, which that's going to come back to play. And we're going to actually, once again, I want you to always understand the state of Israel, the way the stories are told. It may seem like these are different instances, but a lot of this is going on all at the same time. So Samuel's death is actually taking place while David's on the run. While David's on the run, Saul is still pursuing David. All right, the Israel is preparing for a battle. David is getting ready to be pushed out. Well, he's already been pushed out because he's in the wilderness, right?
Mhm.
He's already in the wilderness. So he's already pushed out. Well, we're going to see something happen to David that goes a step further than just being pushed out. And when I get to it, I'm kind of going to give a similarity, and we can talk about it. All right. So as we know, last time David was on a run, right? And Saul finally acknowledged that David was going to be that king. We've seen in 24 that David, he got a little advantage over Saul, and that was the reason, right?
Mhm.
But Saul said, "You're more honorable than me. You were in my hands, and you didn't take my life." Then we see David gets pushed out into the wilderness. Now, in this wilderness, who read ahead? Who read this chapter?
What, 24, 25?
25 now, because 24 was last week. We're on 25 now. And I know we talked about 25, which gave you a little summary of what was to come. But what were some of the important things outside of what I talked about? If you don't remember, I'll give you a quick recap.
He showed a little bit of foolishness, and that he was going to take vengeance for himself, not for God.
Bingo.
Okay. Abigail shows wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
She comes to David and talks to him and tells him about if he takes his vengeance like this, it's going to be a sin against God, and it's something he's going to have to pay for. And David listens to it. Okay. And so he doesn't take the vengeance against Nabal, who
Is a fool.
this was an angry man that refused to help David and his men, even though David and his men had guarded his sheep and his sheep herders.
So I mean, you got it, Andy. Like, you got it. I don't even need to tell anything else. Andy has summarized all 25. No, but in all actuality, that's exactly what it is. We see David starting to get a little bit of that feel. I'm not going to say he was in error. I'm not going to say he was wrong, because remember, David is on a conquest to expand the lands that he's been given. If you look at it, he's been conquested wherever he went. And it's not a conquest like Saul, going in, slaughtering everybody. David is making this conquest by doing good deeds. He goes to an area. If they say, hey, we need help, David says, I'll go. Even though I'm being pursued and I know where I go, Saul will find me easily. Because everywhere he went, somehow magically Saul knew he was there, because word got back to him. Now, sometimes I wonder if it was a spy in his camp, or as David found out later on when he finally had to be pushed out, that he couldn't tell everybody what he was doing. Yeah, it's very familiar that he couldn't tell everybody what he was doing, because remember somebody else in the New Testament, every time he would do something, he would say, don't tell nobody I did this. And then he would disappear. And then he would do something else. He'd be like, don't tell nobody I did this. But what would happen after he did it?
They tell.
Everybody, Jesus saved me, my withered hand. That little boy, that man couldn't tell it. You couldn't stop him from telling the truth. It's the same thing with David. And they will tell him. So David is, for lack of better terms, cleansing the land. But he's doing so without going against Saul. So when he comes to the situation with Nabal, it's very interesting, because he's in his area where he lives. Now, this man isn't like, I want you to think of a very big ranch owner who has a lot of space. Now, he claimed the space is his. He lets his men go out, they forage, they shear their sheep, they do whatever they need to do throughout the day. Now, prior to David, I would imagine that the way the land was, and as we're going to see, the Philistines, they raided everything. If you had it, they came to take it. So in this land, I take it that someone would had to be raiding them for David to say, I'll protect your guys when they come out here in the wilderness. For him to say, nope, I'm not giving you any provisions while y'all out there, was almost a slap in the face to David. David forgetting who he was, but remembering what he could do, he said, gird your swords. Let's go. we're going to wipe everybody out. Now, when he said gird your sword, it's very important, right? Because up until this point, David has picked up swords, but he never said gird it, right? He's grabbed a sword out of the temple. He's grabbed a sword in defense of when he had to go out, but he's never just said, let me go get a sword to avenge myself. He's never did that, right? And that's what we talked about, him going to avenge himself. And on this way to avenge himself, some things take place. And I like to pull out some pieces in the text, and I'll we'll hold up. Electronics to catch you every time. All right. So David tells his men to gird their swords. And as they're girding their swords, getting ready to get up, they're on their way. But somehow the word that simultaneously that's happening to David, it's also happening at home with Abigail. Right? And while she's there, she's like, wait a minute. David, the David that's running from Saul, the David that killed Goliath, the David that has been protecting our lands, you don't want to give them? Wait a minute. So she does what should have been done. She jumps on a donkey, she loads everything up, and she meets David before he can get there. Now, I'm going to read some things that was said to her. To him. And I'm going to start at let's start at First Samuel chapter 25, verse 23. 23.
Before you get there, you have to you also have to know Abigail, right? What was said about her, Abigail. I'm just going to read it real quick. It's verse 3. And it says, the name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife Abigail, and she was a woman of good understanding and beautiful appearance. But the man was harsh, evil in his doing. He was the house of Caleb.
I mean, he was his own people. This was David's people. He's out there protecting his people. Even though he's in the wilderness, he's out there protecting his people. And this man still told him no. But his wife, as they say in this day, she has some good sense.
Yes.
You know, as we all should have when it comes to servicing the Lord. For lack of better terms. All right, now I got to go back.
Verse 23.
No. I had to go back. Well, I'm gonna go to 21 because David says something right there to kind of let it be known that he's jaded. In 21, David says, only in vain have I protected all that this one has in the wilderness. So not that a speck was missing of all that belongs to him. And he repaid me evil for good. So David was like, it's sword time. Nothing to talk about. Because remember, his whole thing when he was telling Saul is, I did no evil to you. So David is a very, if we could say it, black and white in terms of good and evil. If you do evil to me, I'm going to wipe you out because anything evil is against God. But not this time. God didn't send David to do that. This was a personal conquest of David because he was mad. Who wouldn't be angry after you ran from Saul? You find a place, you see people, you protect them, and all you're expecting is just some food and provisions while you're out in the wilderness. Which one of you in here wouldn't have been upset? I can't lie. I would have. I've been upset over things that were more minuscule than that. But David had a rightful cause in his eyes. So when David went to get the swords, the wife came, and this is what Abigail said to David. And I want you to really listen to the words that she's saying. All right. Man, I keep getting lost. 23. Did my thing go fast? Oh. No. Let's start with Abigail. I'm sorry. Let's start at 18. And I'm going to basically recap the whole story. Then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves and 2 skins of wine and five sheeps made ready and 5 measures of roasted grain and 100 clusters of raisin and 200 cakes of figs and then loaded them on a donkey, which means they had enough to share. They had it. So his denial of giving it to David is just because he didn't want to. And it came to be, she rode on a donkey, and she went down under cover of the hill, and there was David and his men coming towards her, and she met them. That's where David said, how can this one do evil for me? And he said, let God do so more and more also to the enemies of David. And if I leave one male of who belongs to him by morning light, because David was coming for total annihilation. That's what had been taught. That's what he carried. And Abigail saw David, and she hastened to come down from the donkey and fell on her face before David and bowed down to the ground and fell at his feet and said, "O me, my master, let this crookedness be on me." Right then and there, she took ownership, right? She took ownership of what happened. She didn't have to say, let him be on me. David had already said who he was coming to kill, right? Was females mentioned in there? He said it wouldn't be one male by daylight. So why did Abigail feel compelled to do this? What was her reason? Was it to save herself? I mean, with her knowledge and would she comprehended that quick, Abigail could have easily took that donkey and them 5 housemaids and rode out the other way with that whole load and been okay, right? No, it was her husband. We see once again loyalty to her husband. And we see countless times throughout the scriptures, we get the husband and wife, the bridegroom, different analogies for relationships, right? But this was her husband. She wasn't gonna let this man come up here and kill her husband, even though she knew he was a foolish man. He was a child of he was dead wrong. She knew all these things. So she's jumping down and saying, let me take this on me. Because maybe if I can put it on me, David might have some passion. Let me talk to him. And please let your female servants speak in your ears. And he hears the word of the female servant. Please let not my master regard this man of Baal, which just means wickedness. And as Baal, Nabal. For his name is also Nabal, and that just means fool. And his folly is with him, meaning that foolishness, that stupidity of knowing what someone is doing for you, that knowing that these people are taking care of you. You have to be foolish to not do it. So his name fits his actions, fits the folly that lives inside him. But I, your female servant, did not see the young men of my master whom you sent. And now my master, as God lives, as your being lives, since God has withheld you from coming to bloodshed and avenging yourself. Key word here, avenging yourself. Everywhere that David had went, what was one of the number one things that David did before going anywhere?
Prayed,
He consulted with God.
God.
God, should I go up here and take this? Nope. God, should I go up here and do that? Nope. But this one time he didn't ask. He girded his swords and he was on his way. It was when Abigail came out, is when he came back to his memory. And you know, sometimes I say, I don't have to say it. Jesus said it. Don't let your anger kindle too long. Because look what anger could have done to David. Could have sent him down the wrong path. And now, my master, as God lives and your being lives, since God has withheld you from coming to bloodshed and avenging yourself with your own hands. Now then, let your enemy be as Nabal, a fool, even those who seek evil against my master. And now this present, which your female servant has brought to my master, let it be given to you and the young men and follow you. And she goes on again and says, please forgive the transgressions of your female servant. Notice how she keep taking on. Go ahead.
I just want to ask them, Petedy, in 26 at the beginning, when he says she's talking past tense.
What do you mean?
You see that in 26, she says, now therefore, my Lord, as the Lord lives and as your soul lives, since the Lord has restrained you from shedding blood. My question is, what event is she talking about?
Well, the one right here where she met him on the road. That's the restraint. If that woman never came to the road, David's plan was to go forward and do what David was going to do. The restraint, the Lord restraining him, was Abigail being on the road. And you'll see it. David's going to tell her that.
Restrained.
Go ahead.
I have a question about that. Now, what do you think was used to restrain David? Her words or what she gave him in response to the service he had did?
Oh, I think it was some word.
It was a word. It was all of it. It was seeing her come out. It was before. So take Nebel, right? He sent nothing. He gave David nothing. And in fact, he didn't even give him the courtesy to tell him no to his face. He sent his men away. Get up out of here. I don't care what y'all shared. They took word back to the king or to David. Go ahead.
Well, the question brought up is because of what it says there in verse 24, right, Ken? It said, and so she fell on her feet and said, on me, my Lord, and let this iniquity be, and please let your maidservant speak in your ears and hear the words of your maidservant. Is that what you're referring to? Because he had to hear the word.
Mhm.
And she had bowed down to him, okay, as was needed to be, but also God's restraining hand, the remembrance of what God has told him
Mhm.
came back to him as she spoke those words.
Serving several purposes there.
Mm.
Not only was she protecting her husband at that point, but she was also showing thanks and honor to David at that point also.
Let's see what Abigail's reason behind it
Right.
was. Okay. So Abigail gives David a reason why she actually came out, and she knew something that David knew as well. But she also knew how important it was to keep David hands from slaughtering the lands. Because if you think about it, remember, now I'm gonna step away and think about the land of Israel. If David start going around killing people, what good is he? Him and Saul basically doing the same thing. I got two people to want to kill us all. Because where's Nabal? Caleb, right?
Mhm.
Is he? And if he's Caleb, that means he is part of Israel because he's in that land, right? So these are things. That's why a lot of the word get back to Saul, because David is moving around. I don't want people to think that David is just outside on the street. He's moving around Israel, and we'll see him mention what's getting ready to take place to run him out of Israel. But let's finish with Abigail, because she said after she doubles down on asking for forgiveness. In 28, she says, please forgive the transgression of your female servant. Abigail didn't do anything, but because her house is part of what David is coming to destroy, she has the sense outside of the fool to go and do it. We already established that she's a very wise woman, right? So obviously a wise woman married a fool. It's probably typically the case. Huh?
No, he said it. He said it under his breath.
Sometimes I gotta think for myself not to say crazy stuff, but a wise woman married a fool. So, but and she says, please forgive the transgressions of your female servant, for God is certainly making a steadfast house for my master, because my master fights the battle of God, and evil is not found in you in all your days. And if a man rise to pursue you and seek your life, and the life of my master has been bound in the bundle of the living God, your God, then the lives of your enemies he shall sling out. Now here's a callback, because this lets you know what Abigail isn't slow. People in the land of Israel know what's going on with David. So listen to this callback.
Okay.
She said, he shall sling out as from the pocket of a sling. What you got?
This is what you just said out of your mouth is when you said the people they're aware of what's going on. I think two things are going on here with Abigail. One, from a physical standpoint, the word on the street about how David restrained himself from killing Saul. I think she's alluding to that because that's past tense. The other thing is, because of the amount of language in her voice that is not Abigail, brothers and sisters, I believe that God moved this woman, of course, to do this because she's speaking of things, an enduring house. Now, that's already been prophesied about David and his house. So when he says, my Lord, she's talking about David, the enduring house that God is doing for you. So what I'm getting at is, this isn't just Abigail coming to him trying to save her, to save her husband. This is God bringing Abigail to her, lowercase, almost prophet-wise, to bring David back. Listen, you did right back then. Abigail wasn't there in the cave. She heard about it, but here she is. In my opinion, from what I'm reading, that's why I asked you. I feel like this is God speaking through Abigail, letting David know that this is no happen chance meeting, and David's going to acknowledge that later. Petey, that's why I asked you when he said restrained. I thought that was God saying through Abigail, restrained back there.
Mhm.
Not right here in this, because he's about to be restrained, which we're going to see, but he hasn't been restrained when she says restrained. But go ahead. That's what I was thinking.
So when it comes to what's happening right now, yes, we once again flipped up veil. We know that God had to move for Abigail to say what he said. But I want to say, put the veil back down.
Okay.
Abigail is in Israel with everybody else. The land is big, but the word gets out. Remember, this nation has grown, but people are still talking. Obviously, when David moves around, now I want to bring it back. I want to bring it back because I want to let y'all know we see David on a run, but we forget what David has done in the land of Israel. Saul killed 1,000. David killed 10,000. My thing is this: if I knew a man that killed 10,000 people, I think, just me personally, I might have a little restraint too if I come out to meet him on the road. I might say things like, that God is establishing your kingdom, because David, his kingdom is being established. The people are seeing it. They're locked in where they see Saul fighting every day. People are leaving Saul's kingdom or where he is. And they see David on the move, still taking care of the people. So it's a thing where they see it, but you have to also think that if she's speaking, that means she has some understanding of the word. Remember, she's not foolish. She has understanding. That was chapter.
Yeah, it said she has understanding. It's beautiful. She has understanding.
So she,
go ahead.
I was saying she has understanding. And let me finish reading the text and then we'll get a little bit more. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Go.
Okay. And the reason why I want to finish reading the text is because what Abigail is saying to David, we actually see David's mind change.
Yeah.
His heart change.
You do.
His thought of girding my sword doesn't sound as smart as it did when I did it. Coming up here to do this doesn't sound as wise as it did. I did it. And he's going to acknowledge Abigail for her wisdom. And I'll go back to 30. And it shall be, when God has done for my master according all the good that he has spoken concerning you, and has commanded you to be ruler over Israel. Now, could I say that she's a prophet? No, I can't say that. But what I can say is she is speaking the sounds that the land is saying. David will be king. Like, Saul isn't just chasing David because people are like sitting back and telling Saul, don't worry about David. It's going to be, no, every chance he get, they're walking down the street. I know David going to be king. Who said that? I'll kill you. Strange reminder. And it says, and after she says this to him about has command to be a ruler over Israel, she says, do not let this be a stagger and a stumble of the heart of my master, that you have shed blood without cause. Oh, that my master had, or, now I want you to remember this, did you shed blood without cause, or my master saved himself? We don't want you to go back. And the people of her house saying, well, you know what? I saved myself. David was scared. No. David was coming to kill you. So the house master or her husband can't say that he had anything to do with this salvation. Sound very interesting, right? He doesn't have anything to do with being saved. All right. It's done good. Let this bloodshed, that you have shed blood without cause, or that my master has saved himself. And when God has done good to my master, then remember your female servant. And David said to Abigail, blessed be God, Lord of Israel, who sent you to meet me today. So there we go. We got our answer. Who sent Abigail? David, no.
That's what I was getting at. That's why I asked that question. If you look at verse 28, it mentions, please give the transgression of your maidservant for the please forgive, brother, for the Lord will certainly make my Lord an endurance house. You see the future reign of David. And I mean, this is for the Lord, but look what it says here in the same verse. Because my Lord is fighting the battle of the Lord. The battle of the Lord is not against Israel. It's against the enemy. So if David will harm my husband, he'll be like the bird people he's going to be king over. And she's reminding him, he didn't send you a battle against your people. Yeah, you were done wrong. But your battle is not with these people. Your battle with others. And then she goes down here in verse, the end of 31, it says, Luke 3:30, I mean, and when the Lord does for my Lord, according to all the good that he has spoken concerning you, check this out, appoints you ruler over Israel. They're not your enemy.
No, she said it. Remember what I said earlier. We see the scriptures unveiled, but think about it. If David start killing people, Israel, if he goes against what I can only imagine that if he killed people in Israel, it would be just, I guess, got to raise up another prophet. But we see that that wasn't the case because we know the whole story. But if you look at it, so
There's been like infighting also.
let's go a little further. I'm gonna give you a snippet to part 2 or coming soon. I'll roll a trailer for you. There's this guy named David, and he sees a woman that he likes. I'm giving you just the trailer. Explosions, love story, kissing music, put all that stuff in the background of your mind. And David sees this woman he likes. So he keeps sending this man to battle. They show all these gallant battles, right? And then the man dies. What does God tell David? Why is the reason that David can't build the temple?
Because he sinned.
For blood.
Your hands got blood on them.
Yes.
You can't build my temple.
But even before you got that part, just here watching the things that going on, because you need still Abigail's in the picture. Okay. And as Gaynell alluded to, there's gonna be another one and he's already married and stuff. You'll see things start to build up to cause this situation.
Let's not write David off for the wives, you know.
He's not wise.
No, I'm saying let's not write David off for having many wives.
No.
But we will say that first wife that he has is something brewing there if you read ahead a little bit. Oh man, the story.
You talking about the one that his father gave him?
Oh yes. So we see that this thing is going on. All right.
Yes.
So let me finish with David and Abigail. And David said to Abigail, "Blessed be God, Lord of Israel, who has sent you to meet me today. And blessed is your good taste. And blessed are you because you have kept me this day from coming to bloodshed and avenging myself with my own hands." Abigail stopped that. Man, if we could have had Abigail around later on, well, maybe we did. Go figure. All right. So nevertheless, as God, Lord of Israel lives, who has kept me back from doing evil to you, if you had not hurried to come to meet me, not a male would have been left to Nabal by break of day for certain. And afterwards, David, David starts some niceties with her. He receives from her hand all that was brought to him. And Abigail went to Nabal to see he was at the feast and he's sitting there. And she didn't want to tell him anything. She didn't want to tell him how close they came to dying. Well, not her. He said all males. So she didn't want to tell him how close he came to dying and everything that was there. So because he was drunk, he was at a party, he was merriment. Once again, a wise woman. Why would you tell a drunk person who probably had men, because if he had men down there sharing, that David came at you? This man is foolish, right? You go back up there as wife. Oh, babe. They down there and they was getting ready to come up here and I had to take something. You took what? You took my stuff down there after I told them not to? Everybody get your shears. We going down there and fight. Next thing you know, you have another war. Now, this didn't happen, but it could be a possibility. If you tell a foolish man who already had a foolish act, what more could he have compiled onto it? We don't know. So she waited. She made a wise choice and waited. And she did it at the right time. Because when she told him, his heart stopped. It's out of there. All right. And I kind of wrapped it up because after that, David went back and was like, so Abigail, you're single now? Like, now I know it probably wasn't right afterwards, but we know that he went and got her and a couple other wives.
And that answered the question I asked. It was what she said, because he agreed not to go on this war rampage after what she said. Then she gave him the gift.
Mm.
So it was listening to wisdom or something from his why he did. And of course, he saw before the scripture, vengeance is the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
But didn't he say, and Al, my whole point was in 34. He says, David says it flat out. I get the agents. Y'all know I'm always leaning towards the sovereignty of God. And I get the unveiled versus veiled thing that you're saying as well, Petey. But David flat out says it in 34. He says, nevertheless, as the Lord God of Israel lives, not Abigail.
Right.
You see, he says, not who has restrained me from harming you.
Right, but it's okay. It's like it's him. He's teaching, right? But who's teaching? Okay. The Lord teaches us, right? But he used
Human agents.
So he used Abigail as a human agent. But it's the Lord working through her, because she saw that David was the future king.
Right.
And the Lord used her. So it was the Lord, but the Lord uses human agents.
Absolutely.
In this case, he used Abigail. So, but the Lord, he saw that we talked about in the opening.
I believe that, and I mean, I say this with this is what is it, Petyisms, all right? I believe that if God wanted to stop David's heart right there on the spot, we all know he could have. But if he would have did that, then what story would we have to learn from? Everything is for our edification. Any step that you might see minuscule, or any step that you might say, well, it was God doing this, we know that. Like the whole Bible starts with in the beginning, and I was there but not there, if that makes sense. So when we look at it, the start, we know that I mean, God is so involved in this chapter that most of the time it's just one line. Should I go up there? Yep, go up there. Will I take them? Yeah, you'll take them. Because he knows the pieces. Everybody who's asking about the play, even the players that are consulting God, God is like, oh, let me ask this question because I'm already moving over here. Yeah, David, go ahead. It's also like we know that he's orchestrating it. Even the point where David, okay, David, get your swords. I see you getting ready to go up there. Have I go move. It's just that simple. I can't play God, but he's moving everything around. We have that. But what we have to see is what's happening between David and Abigail. That's important. We see that David was getting ready to err. Even though he's doing something good, he was taking care of people, and immediately he was ready to err. He called it a stumbling block that would have been placed in his way. Something that if he would have killed Nabal, even if he would have rose the king, it would have been something said constantly about what David did to Nabal. Constantly throughout the land. The same way the verbiage is being spread about Saul. So what good would David have been? He would have been just like Saul. Murdering his own people.
I understand what you're saying, but the Lord, just think of how much trouble we would be in had we not listened to wise spiritual counsel. Okay, so she gave David wise spiritual counsel. Yeah, it was the Lord, but the Lord used her. Just like he used Esther, which we get in that story. You know, they can't say Esther saved it. Then it was the Lord, but
it was still human agent.
Right.
So David is now calm, but he also lost a wife. He gained some wives and he lost one. Because his dad just said, you know what, David ain't here. I'm gonna just give my daughter to somebody else, which makes her what? Saul, knowing the law, has made his daughter adultery. Simple as that. So Saul is breaking a lot of rules here. And he knows he's breaking them. At this point, it's just like, he made her an adultery. She's already married to David. So he just gave his daughter away to somebody else. Now, with that being said, is David still Saul's son? An heir to the king? Just because you get that man's wife away, does it change? You know, those are the things that I think about when I think about what was going on as more from the monarchy, as opposed to just looking at it from a scriptural standpoint. I think about a monarchy. Saul just gave away his wife, which means that the gentleman that has taken over as the husband is now the new son-in-law. Saul is still trying to eradicate David in any way he can. If I can't kill him, I'll just take him from the kingdom. Make sense? So it was such a small part at the end, but you can see how it played out.
Why you kept trying to kill him?
Oh, that too. I mean-
He already given David's wife to another man. So now I gotta find and kill David. There's a 180 to that too.
Before he gave the wife away, he was trying to kill David. I think giving the wife away was just another slap to David while he's out there. When you look at what Saul is doing, it's all to David.
Initially, well, how did it start? How did it start or when did it start? Where Saul went after it. When did it start? How did it start?
Well, go ahead.
He slayed 1,000 and Saul, I mean, David slayed 10,000. He was jealous.
So jealous. Right? So was it enough to kill a man?
That's what they
Especially-
was trying to find out. Why was he
Every time
trying?
you heard that song.
So let's look at that question. Was it enough to kill a man? Okay.
Hmm.
So we have a king,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, you are the king of entire Israel, a new nation, not just a king, you're a new king. Previous to this, you had a judge, prophet Samuel. And you and Samuel had an interaction, and Samuel told you, you will no longer have the reign of Israel, right? So Saul immediately knew that somebody was coming. He knew it. It's evident. Samuel told you. He told you would be here. So if he tell you you're not going to be here anymore, that has to be true too. Saul was trying to fight against fate. He was fighting against something that was inevitable to happen. However, when David came along, he had a target now. He had a target because it had been made known to him, maybe not in the sense of this man is going to be king, but the people, because remember a while back, it said the world or the people were going after David. So Saul wanted to kill David for the same reason the Pharisees, when they first heard about Jesus, they was like, nah, ain't nobody. And then they realized, wait a minute, people are actually following after him. So Saul started to also see David's growth. Not so much, we got him growth as a fighter. We got him growth as popularity amongst the people. David is a wise man. It said he never acted unwise going out. He honored Saul, what he did. So, and he owed David something. David didn't just go up and say, Saul, I want to marry your daughter. That was what was promised when he killed Goliath.
Yes.
And then he shortchanged him. He said, no, you can't have her, but you can have her. And then come to find out it was one David liked. So Saul has these two, without even knowing, have walked against each other. One on the path of righteousness and one not. And as the two paths continue to go, now I'll go back. As the two paths continue to go, they somehow got a glimpse of each other. And the race continues. One was running with God, and one was running on his own merit. And as he ran on his own merit, he stumbled. And David continued to move forward. And he stumbled again. And David continued to move forward. So the kingdom, the people. How long has Saul been after David? Since the moment he got his cloak torn. Because he knew somebody was coming. The people just put the message out. It's the same thing that happened to Christ. Christ was walking around. But the people, you can only do so many miracles before people come around and like, look, I know you did a miracle yesterday. I'm going to follow you everywhere. And I mean, we've been following Christ ever since, right? So it's no different from David. We see the lesser Christ and the greater David in this story. How you want to slice the cheese is there. So that's when Saul became aggravated with David. I mean, we can go as far back and say this was how the story's supposed to go, but if we had to put a pinpoint on it, it's when the people started to cheer for David. Because remember, David soothed them at first. He was in Saul's chamber. And to eventually, he was in Saul's court. To eventually he got a spear thrown on him and realized that's a horrible place to be. I might want to be somewhere else. He even tried to come back again. It didn't work out for him. So if I had to put my finger on it, I would have to say it's when Saul told him that it was going to be a new king. Maybe he didn't know it was going to be David. I mean, if you think about it, when when Samuel tore Saul's cape, right? Was David even in the picture? So it was an enemy out there that Saul didn't know who it was until it was identified by what was taking place. So he knew he had an enemy.
Well, you have to always go back to where Saul didn't do what God asked him to do, was to eliminate all those people, everything, but he didn't.
Yep.
Okay. And then you have to go all the way up to chapter 24, is where all of a sudden Saul now recognized him and recognized that David is going to be king, and swear to him not to affect the rest of his line.
Yeah.
But then Saul's mind again
Flipped on him, because we see that right here in verse 26. I'm gonna speed through this one because verse 26 is similar to a previous
chapter
story.
26.
I'm in chapter 26. Forgive me. It's age, yeah, that's what it is. We see Saul. Somebody comes to Saul and say, "Hey, Saul, you know David is over there in the wilderness. We could go and get him. Let's go." So Saul said, "Why not?" He grabbed a couple thousand men and went out there. But just like Saul, and I love this because they talk about the camp being in a deep sleep. I know I'm jumping a little ahead, but they talk about the camp being in a deep sleep. And the last time they talked about when God put somebody to sleep, there was a creation of woman, a deep sleep like that. All right, now we see deep sleep, but these guys were asleep. Because David said, "Hey, who want to go with me over there? We're going to go to the camp of Saul."
All his men wanted to go.
Yeah, everybody was like, "Wait, we want to kill Saul?" We've been waiting for this moment forever. But David chose his right-hand man. He said, "Nah, you go with me. Let's go."
Mm-hmm.
So as David and Abishai, did I say that right?
Yeah, you fine.
Okay, Abishai, they get to the camp and they tiptoe around everybody's heads and they get to, oh, wait a minute. You know, I always think about like the cartoon with the dogs, they all lined up. Tom and Jerry most likely, and Jerry's on the end, and all the tails is lined up, and Tom is like stepping over each one like that. You can imagine David and his man, but they doing it tactfully. It's pretty cool looking. They got their little sword, they jumping around and they moving, and they get right by Saul's head, this water jug. And this guy was like, "Look, I know last time you said don't lay a hand on him, but just let me run him through with the spear once. Just once. I don't want to do anything after that. Just one time."
He's done.
But he made sure he told David, just one time. But here's the thing. David could have said, "Well, stab him in the leg."
No.
Nope. Because what did David reply? It was the same reply as earlier. You don't touch one of God's anointed. We don't do that. But what we are going to do this time, we're going to take the spear and the jug and we're going to go over the other side. And we're going to wake everybody up. So David snuck in to this camp. Now, how many people was there? I think it said about 2,000, 3,000.
3,000.
He got 3,000 people surrounding him. And he snuck in there and took this man's spear and jug, got out of there, and then said, now, this is why I love David. And I take it, this is what I love, because I think sometimes David does like to poke the bear.
Yes, he did.
Because David, every time it happens, David could have just escaped, went away, and not said anything. But it was for Saul. It was for Saul that it was being told. So that his heart was softened, because he continuously is trying to kill me. And I'm like, bro, I could have killed you twice. So he calls over to Saul, and this time he does something different. David takes a different approach. He takes a tactic. It's almost like a military tactic. I know I'm not going to kill the king, but I can get rid of your number one. So he tells him, "Hey, you let me sneak all the way over there, and you're supposed to be protecting God's anointed. Hey, Saul, that man should die." Like
Abner.
Abner, like, wait a minute. I was in a deep sleep, being brought on by the Lord. How could I do anything? Nope. Abner, you got to go. So when David says this, and I'm gonna go to 12. I'm gonna start at 12. It says, "So David took the spear of the jug, about water by Saul's head, and they went away. And no man saw or knew or woke, for they were all asleep, because of the deep sleep from God had fallen on them." And David passed over. He goes back, and David calls out to the people and to Abner, son of Ner. He called out to Abner specifically by name. Why? Because he was supposed to be protecting God. Now, I want you to understand another thing too. This has other connotations. Because who would else have been there to protect Saul if he wasn't being chased?
Jonathan.
David.
Oh, David, yeah.
He was wise. He was fair. You think David's going to David would have had all his men, once again, hypothetical, we just talking about. They probably would have had all his men stand and watch while everybody else was just laying around. Nobody would have been able to get next to Saul. You see the love and the vigor that he has for Saul when he could kill him. So imagine what he would do to protect Saul. So he's letting Saul know the people you got around you protecting you, they're worthless. Kill them. Because you're chasing me, you have worthless people around you. Because you're chasing sin, you have worthless people around you.
I like the way that the scripture says the Lord caused deep sleep. It wasn't their cleverness of being so wicked in there. You know, it's the Lord help sleep.
So when David's talking to Abner, he says, 15, David says to Abner, are you not a man? Like, let me go straight to your soul. Are you not a man? And who is like you in Israel? Because he's letting Abner know, like, you've done some things. Why then have you not guarded your master, the sovereign, or the king? For one of the people came in to destroy the master, your master, the king. He let him know. We came in to do this, and you did nothing. Yeah, hey, once again, Abner's standing there like the rest of them, like, wait a minute, I just woke up too. What's going? But it doesn't matter. David is saying what he needs to say. And Saul recognized David's voice and said, is that your voice, my son, David? And David says, it is my voice, O master, my sovereign. He said, why is it that the master is pursuing his servant? For what have I done? He's still asking a question. For what have I done? And now please let the master of the sovereign hear the words of the servant. Just like Abigail said, let me hear the words, and it changed. But we starting to see, we'll see. Saul say he's going to change. Well, let's see. We'll see if he's going to change. Hear the words of his servant. If God has moved you against me, let him accept an offering. I mean, David's trying to make peace. Hey, if this is what God do, same thing that accept an offering. But no. It says, but if the children are men, then they are cursed before God, for they have driven me out today, that I should not join myself to the inheritance of God, saying, go serve other mighty ones. And let me explain that. David never was going to stop being faithful to God. But David is talking about being pushed out of his land. The children of Israel living in a land, that the promised land that God gave them. For him to not be there means he has to go into a land where other gods are worshipped, where other gods are given praise. He has to go because he has nowhere else to go. So when David said that, I wanted to be clear that David was never going to worship the God of the Philistines, but he was listening to what he said and how he said it. But if the children of men, they are cursed before God, for they have driven me out today, that I should not join myself to the inheritance of God, saying, go and serve other mighty ones, or other idols, or other gods. I don't know what the translation is. Mine say mighty ones. I'm sorry if I'm missing the translation. All right. And now, do not let my blood fall on the earth before the face of God, for the sovereign Israel has come out to seek a flea, as one hunts a partridge in the mountain. And Saul acknowledged he had sinned. And he said, David, come back. But David knew there's no way I can come back, because Saul is going to kill me. All right, it was another verse. 24. So let people out of your knowledge, let him deliver me out of distress. All right. I didn't want to. Is there anything additional that y'all want to add to 26? And I'm keeping them a bridge right now because kind of we're on time and we get so into one chapter, they get so good, man. You end up getting stuck there, but I'm also not rushing. Are there any questions? All right. All right. So in 27, I'm gonna give a brief, really quick, and then we'll wrap it up for tonight. So in 27, we see David now it's bad for David. He has to go. And the very first one, David said in his heart, now I shall perish at the hands of Saul someday. There is not better for me than to escape to the land of the Philistines. And Saul gave up a search for me and any longer in any parts of Israel, and I shall escape out of his hand. David said, the only place that I'm safe is in the land of the Philistines. Now, when David went to the land of Philistines, the first place he went to was Gath.
Hmm.
Now, where was Goliath from? Huh?
God.
No. That was the first. This is the second time he came back. This is the second time. David is back at Gath. That's where Goliath was from. So this king now sees David and he's like, "Hey, David, what you doing here?" And Saul's getting a report that David fled to Gath. So the king gets there and he says, "Well, David being as wise as he is, he knew that living inside the city probably wouldn't have been the best thing. So he talked to the king, and the king gave him land, right? Yavish, ain't that the name of the land? And it's funny because that land still belongs to Judah this day. So that land that was given to David inside of the Philistines' land was his, and he did what he wanted to do with it. David would go in, go out raiding wherever he would raid and come back. And it was funny that the people actually would say, "David, where have you been?" He was like, "Oh, raiding South Judah, South this, North that. I've been everywhere." But that was, now remember when I said why David was keeping things secret? Because David knew this time that if he let that information get out about his raids and everything inside of their land, that people would come back and start telling the Philistine king that, "Hey, you know, David is out here slaughtering people in our lands, like in an area that we are. It's kind of close." Now, remember, I also said all this is happening simultaneously. So whose death just took place?
Who's there? Samuel.
Samuel's dead.
Samuel.
David and Saul had that thing. So David runs off. He's living in there and he's conquesting. Saul now sees a bigger problem. That now David is with the Philistines, and the Philistines are now gearing up for war. I mean, we got David. He killed 10,000. It's only Saul over there left. He can only kill 1,000. We don't even hear no stories about Jonathan or anybody else. We're good now. That's in the minds of the Philistines. We have David. And it's funny that David goes over there. Salvation goes over there, and Israel is no longer able to be saved. They chased Israel out. And I do believe that we hear about Christ going and sending people that were not part of Israel, right? That later on down in them chapters and back into the books that go out to the Gentiles. Well, now salvation is with the Gentiles. And as those Gentiles gear up to get ready to go to war to wipe out the Philistines, we see Saul go against some of the practices that was set in the land. We see Saul go against some more of the laws. We see Saul's decline. And we see that Israel is now going to fall. And we will pick up next week on chapter
27.
27. 27, 28, 29, and 30 will probably go really quick. Unless we start talking about it. Are there any questions for me? I thank y'all for the feedback prior to the beginning of Bible study. It really means a lot when, we get to share the word and I actually see that we're all growing together. It's not, it feels good to know that other people are walking in the same path.